For many in Kenya, access to credit is vital both for personal and economic growth. However, this has continued to be a challenge as interest rates soar. But one man over the last 15 years struggled to create options for accessing credit based on one's credit history. Tonight's Money and Power features Sam Omukoko, the CEO of Metropol East Africa, one of the country's credit referencing bureaus.
Money and Power in association with Johnny Walker.
It's more memorable than the biggest parties the circuit can throw. You can't buy it, you can never guarantee it.
Kenya's economic growth has for a long time been measured on, among other things, access to credit. This has been hinged on the ability of the people to access loans from commercial institutions for use either in personal or business development. But with the rates soaring, default rates have equally been high, creating a buffer between lenders and the customers. As a result, the few who manage have had to comply with high rates as financial institutions peg this to the high-risk premiums. But for Sam Omukoko, this solely exists due to an information gap in the market. It is this gap that he has for the last 15 years sought to bridge.
When I set up this company, I was still sort of doing banking. But it comes out of a gap that I saw, an information gap between the information that the banks were receiving and the information that the customers actually had. And because that information was not sufficient, there was a lot of emphasis on collateral. Yeah, so that in that particular instance, if you did not have collateral, there was no way you could access credit from the banking system.
Having worked in the banking sector, Sam says he knew that with the right information, both banks and customers would make the right decision. This is what led him to set up Metropol East Africa in 1996 while still working in the banking sector.
When I set up Metropol in 1996, the first thing we did was to get a partnership with an international company called Dun & Bradstreet. And Dun & Bradstreet at that time was providing cross-border credit information. So we became their correspondent in the East African market.
While the business seemed to thrive on clients from overseas, Sam says his focus was on the local market and how he'd make it work. But this was not going to be a walk in the park. To begin with, commercial banks operated around high client confidentiality clause. These needed to be overcome through amendments of the Banking Act to allow information sharing. The first break to this came in the year 2004, nearly 10 years later.
They only now mandated the sharing of negative information and made the sharing of positive information optional. But we thought half a loaf is better than none. So we said, let's move on with that.
With the law safely in place, Metropol East Africa received formal licensing from the Central Bank of Kenya in the year 2011. This, according to Sam, was a major boost not only for his business, but also to Kenyans seeking alternative ways of accessing credit from banks. To grow the business, Metropol East Africa also partnered with the other institutions, among them the South African-based Global Credit Rating, as well as set up a debt collection arm, as this was also a primary concern for most banks he was dealing with. Since the licensing, the business, Sam says, has continued to grow with interest from the region. This has also necessitated the establishment of a corporate credit arm with 30 insurance firms, 16 banks, among others, already rated.
The purpose of a credit reference bureau is to enable customers access affordable credit based on their historical performance. And so a credit reference bureau plays a central part in the management of the loan system in a country.
With such a mandate and information sharing being king, I sought to know who provides this information to him and the other credit referencing bureau registered in the country.
As a bureau, we have diverse sources of information. The principal source of our information is the banking sector. There are 43 banks that now contribute data on a monthly basis to our database. But we have information also from Higher Education Loans Board. We have information from institutions like AFC, Kenya Industrial Estate. We have microfinance institutions that have started coming to contribute data to the Bureau.
According to Financial Services Deepening, FSD Kenya, a non-profit organization that monitors the financial services industry, the build-up of consumer information had resulted in the listing of over 200,000 individuals and about 10,000 businesses as bad debtors by April 2012. The report further noted that the defaulters contributed about 98% of the blacklisting cases, followed by issuance of bounced checks and accounts closed on grounds of poor performance.
If you just look at how credit is assessed, when you are assessing credit, you're looking at basically what they call the 5 C's of credit. The first C is character. And character simply means that it's a measure of the willingness of somebody to do something. You took a loan, you promised to pay back, you agreed on a repayment program. How have you adhered to that particular program? The other C's would measure things like capacity. Did you have capacity actually to service that particular loan? Banks would be able to determine.
Although the business has largely revolved around access to credit, it has also found more relevance with the new constitution. With integrity issues being a crucial link in leadership positions, Metropol East Africa has found itself as a bridge to many aspiring politicians and the offices they want to occupy.
It's a busy season for us. Basically, we are processing between 100 to 150 applications a day. What better measure of character can we be able to use other than to say, for example, if you have taken credit in the past, have you been able to service that credit? The evidence is that either you have or you have not. If you have not, and you took credit from the banks, or for example, you're not servicing your university loan, that information will be with us. So when you come, we will be able to check through the system and be able to see whether you are listed as a defaulter or not.
A graduate of mathematics and accounting from the University of Nairobi, I found out from Sam what led him to start his own business, knowing very well a career in banking industry back in the day was among the most sought after.
I have always had a knack of doing business. I remember the first business I tried was when I was in class 5 actually, to try and sell groundnuts to my fellow pupils. I also tried things like, at one time I was a village photographer, running around and taking people's photographs in functions and things like that. So there was that thing that business looked to me a very vibrant area and an area where you can impact on people's lives positively all the time.
With the banking sector rapidly growing and the need to access credit becoming pivotal, Sam says credit referencing bureaus are the way to go. This, he says, will open up Kenya's economy just like it has in other developed countries' financial sectors. But this is also anchored on a few basics while dealing with the loans.
Repaying a loan is not a matter of ability. It's, okay, there's an element of ability in it, but it is more of the willingness to pay that. And that's why it becomes an integrity issue.
However, Sam says there's still a little more to be done in the market, especially the push for commercial banks to start sharing in on positive information on customers. Joseph Bonyo, for KTN, Money and Power.